All right. Come on in. Have a seat. If you went halfway around the world, same latitude, longitude, latitude, where would you find yourself? A, Uzbekistan. Who's going with Uzbekistan? Couple? Okay. B, Russia. Couple. C, Afghanistan. Ooh, quite a few for Afghanistan. D, China. Answer is Uzbekistan. The Kungrad district. I looked at some pictures of it. Looks a lot like Burns, Oregon. Not a lot going on, a lot of desert. So we'll bring that into the sermon somehow today. So we are going through Psalm 116. You can go ahead and turn there. And we're going to pray here, but I wanted to, before we get into the word, we'll go ahead and, usually we read through our passage and then we pray, but we're just going to pray beforehand today, because how many of you remember Michael and Rebecca Carrigan? They came to True Light early on. Amazing. Some of my favorite people in the world, okay? They moved here. They came up, they shared their testimony one time at True Light. And some of who here has had dinner at their house? Anyone? If you did, you were spoiled. Michael is a chef, and Rebecca is a baker, and they moved down to Lebanon to start a bakery down there, and they've had a ton of success. I believe it's won like some awards and whatnot. But anyway, I ran into them at Isaac Rush's wedding last week. And they asked for prayer because Rebecca had a mass on her thyroid. And so I just want to read, because you guys know Michael sent me this today and is asking for prayer, so I'll just go ahead and I'll read it, and then we'll pray together for them. So, hello friends, as many of you know, Rebecca had a biopsy on her left thyroid this past Monday. Heard back from doctor the test wasn't conclusive and warranted greater concern. There is a 40% chance that her mass is cancerous. Doc has requested additional testing, which will take 2 more weeks. Doc suggested that she get the ball rolling with surgeon, as the mass most likely needs to be removed in her thyroid, regardless of pathology reports. Although this wasn't what we hoped to hear, we are trusting God. And then he says Romans 8:28, for all things work together for good for those who love God. Rebecca seems to be a bit sad, but doing okay. I am doing well. Please keep her in prayers. We'll keep you all posted. Thanks for your love and care, Michael. I actually feel bad for you if you didn't get the chance to meet Michael and Rebecca, because they are that amazing of people. I got to go down to their bakery maybe like a year and a half ago, and Michael greets everyone by name. He prays for people at the counter as they order. He tells a story. They had a trans individual who walked in there one day and breaking down, and Michael shared the gospel with him and prayed for him there. And the Lord is doing amazing things through that bakery, which they see as a ministry. And they are just the most amazing people. So I want to lift them up in prayer together, and please be praying for them throughout the week as well. Father, God, you are in control of all things. You reign sovereign over cancer. You reign sovereign over all events in this life. And so, God, I am praying for Michael and Rebecca. We are praying for them, that you would bring healing to Rebecca, that 40% chance would be a 0% chance. God, that you would give Rebecca peace, that you would give her family peace, that you would give Michael peace. I praise you that they love you. I praise you for all of the amazing works that you have done in their life. And I pray that this will be another one of them. God, please glorify yourself in this. I pray that you would heal Rebecca and that you would be with them. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, open up to Psalm 116. Like I said, we will be at the park next week, so we will not be in any of the Psalms. And then we'll come back. We'll do 1, maybe 2 more weeks in the Psalms. And then we will start a new book, which all sources look at like it's going to be Ecclesiastes, okay? Which if you've ever read Ecclesiastes, is a book of wisdom and really gives us a much different outlook on life than what this world would teach us. And so I think we would have a lot to glean. I think Ecclesiastes is one of those books. We talk all the time about what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. We talk about suffering in here a lot, taking up our cross. Ecclesiastes is one of those books that is unique in itself that, we do all those things, but God also wants us to enjoy what he has given us in life. And Ecclesiastes gives us that kind of wisdom and really helps us to see life in a different light as well. So I'm pretty excited for that. Unless something changes in the next 2 weeks, you can count on that. And then I think my thought is we're just going to be in the wisdom literature this year. So we'll do Ecclesiastes and we'll get into James right after that, and that'll be this year. Because hey, we all need wisdom, don't we? Right? I know I sure do. So Psalm 116. Let's go ahead and read it. This is what is called a Egyptian Hallel psalm. Psalms 113 through 118 all are in this category of psalms. They focus on God's saving work both individually and corporately through the nation of Israel. It was often recited at the feasts, and these psalms were recited at Passover. I believe they still are sung to this day at the Passover meal. Psalms 113 and 114 sung before Passover meal, and then 115 through 118 sung after the Passover meal. So that's still going on. So just a little context of what we're getting into here. So Psalm 116, let's read it. I love the Lord because he has heard my voice and my pleas for mercy, because he inclined his ear to me. Therefore I will call on him as long as I live. The snares of death encompassed me. The pangs of Sheol laid hold on me. I suffered distress and anguish. Then I called on the name of the Lord. O Lord, I pray, deliver my soul. Gracious is the Lord and righteous. Our God is merciful. The Lord preserves the simple. When I was brought low, he saved me. Return, O my soul, to your rest, for the Lord has dealt bountifully with you. For you have delivered my soul from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. I believed even when I spoke. I am greatly afflicted. I said in my alarm, all mankind are liars. What shall I render to the Lord for all his benefits to me? I will lift up the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. O Lord, I am your servant. I am your servant, the son of your maidservant. You have loosed my bonds. I will offer to you the sacrifice of thanksgiving and call on the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people, in the courts of the house of the Lord, in your midst, O Jerusalem. Praise the Lord. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your word, and we thank you that you save us. God, I pray that you would have your way in this room tonight. If there is anyone who feels like they have been entrapped, who feels like there's no way out of a situation or whatnot, God, that you would show them tonight that there is always a way, and it starts with, Lord, save me. God, you are so incredibly good and gracious. And I pray that we would see that tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's get into it. All right, Psalm 116, verses 1 through 4. What do we talk about? God hears. Now, if we look at verse 1, it says, I love the Lord. He makes this exclamation. Why does he love Yahweh? It says because he has heard, because he has inclined his ear to me. Now, we don't know the circumstances of what was going on with the psalmist here, whether he was in poor health or famine or his enemies had surrounded him, and so it seemed like certain death was about to overtake him. What we do know is that in verse 3, it says, the snares of death encompassed me. The pangs of Sheol laid hold on me. It personifies death here. Like death becomes a person and hunts him down and lays a trap for him and puts him in a net. And so death has wrapped him up in this net, and he just is waiting to die, is the language we see here with what's written. Doesn't sound good. But what he did is that he cried out to God, and God heard, and God acted. And thus he says, I love the Lord. Now this is the same principle as we see throughout the scriptures. 1 John 4:19, a short verse but very important. It says, we love, why? Because he first loved us. We love God because of the love and the mercy and the grace and the compassion that he has first shown to us. He is the one who has rescued us from destruction by sending his Son to take our place. We love Jesus. Why do we love Jesus? Because he bore our sins on that cross. And he gives us new life. Our love for God always starts with his love for us. Romans 5:6-8. For while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even to die. But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. It all starts with God's love for us through Christ. Now, eventually in our Christian walk, the more we mature into it, we come to love God for his attributes, for about how great he is, how he's perfect, how he's holy, how beautiful he is. Like, I love him. He's just the best. But our initial love for God comes kind of the same reason that we see from the psalmist here. He saved me. That's why I loved him to begin with, because he saved me from death. Verse 4 says, then I called on the name of the Lord. O Lord, I pray, deliver my soul. He says, O Lord, save me. Is what he cried out to God. O Lord, just save me. And I can still remember, I've told you guys this, that first time calling out to God on my parents' couch, just being addicted to drugs and everything like that, and hitting that all-time low of depression and just wanting nothing more to do in life, that lowest part of my life, and just crying out to God, basically, God save me. And he did. He brought relief. Like that, myself 18 years ago, here the psalmist has no other options. He has nothing else or no one else to turn to. And so he cries out to God. He's got to rely on God alone. He knows that he can't save himself. And so he's humble before the Lord and totally dependent on God, which is exactly where God wants each and every one of us all the time. Totally dependent on him. Look at verse 6. It says, the Lord preserves the simple. When I was brought low, he saved me. When he was humbled, God saved him. I am almost 100% convinced in this life that the number one thing that will lead people to hell or eternal destruction is not lust, it's not greed, it's not false gods, but it's pride. It's this mindset, this life is all about me. I am the center of the universe. We may not say that, but a whole lot of people live that way. They might not come out and say, I am the center of the universe, but you look at their life and that's exactly how they live. That it's all about me. That I'm enough. That I'm a good person. That I can save myself and I don't need God. Pride, all of it. You look at Eden. At the fall, a lot happened there. There's 3 lies. There's more lies than that, but 3 lies that I want to look at right now that Satan told Eve. 1, that you can be like God. So you eat this fruit and you will be like God. And it's a lie. 2, that you don't need God anymore if you eat this fruit. You can be like God, so guess what? You don't need God. And 3, guess what, Eve? It's all about you. So take and eat and fulfill your desires. All pride, all of it. Isaiah 2:17 talks about the day of the Lord when the day of God's wrath, when Christ will come again. It says, and the haughtiness of man shall be humbled, and the lofty pride of men shall be brought low, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. Jesus says something very similar in Matthew 23. He says, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. The humble will be exalted, and the proud will be humbled. Now, I like to golf. I think you guys know that. I talk about golf sometimes. And I'd say I'm a pretty good golfer compared to your average Joe. Okay? I'd say I'm a pretty good golfer compared to your average Joe. Now, I could boast about that, and I could say I'm a great golfer. I could say all these things, right? I could say them all. And I could be very proud of my golfing ability. But you know what I could then go do? I could go golf against Tiger Woods, and he would make me look like a 4-year-old. And you know what I would say when you say, hey, Brian, how are you feeling now? I would say I'm humbled, right? It's the same way for the proud person. And I'm a great person compared to your average Joe. That's what the world does. They think God grades on a scale and whatnot, that I just got to be better than the average guy, and then I'm good to go, right? You want to depend on your own righteousness. That's not how it goes here. People think they're pretty good, but one day we are all going to stand right before an all-holy, perfect God, and that will be the measuring stick of our goodness. And then we'll see how foolish that was and be humbled. God seeks a humble heart that cries out, save me, and he saves that humble heart every single time. Now, I want to talks about death being like setting a net or a trap. And I want to just make a point. I'm going to show a little GIF here from probably the greatest movie ever created. It's called Kung Pao Enter the Fist. And it's a tiny net. I knew Andrew would laugh at it. I figured that'd be the only one. Please don't go see the movie because you'll never come back to this church. Because of what I said. It's the most ridiculous film that's ever been made in the history of man. But I want to talk about nets here for a second, and I'll get rid of that or else you can't take me seriously with that going on. Now, I have never been caught in a net, but I know somewhere I have read that if you are ever caught in a net, don't struggle around everywhere because it makes things worse. You just get more tangled up, right? That makes sense to me. The more you struggle, the worse it gets. If I go back to 19-year-old self-me, I would say that's exactly what I felt like in my life, like I was all tangled up in a net, and there was no way to break free, and yet I struggled and I struggled and I struggled. But I just ended up making things worse. I'd be depressed, so I'd drink a lot, or I'd smoke myself to sleep. And then I'd get more depressed, and I'd do that more, and it was just making things worse as I struggled to break free and to do it on my own. And I had little hope of escape. And I'm not sure where everyone is here tonight. Maybe you've been living for yourself and your own desires and you feel trapped by it. Maybe you feel like you're in a net and you can't get out. And I just want to tell you, stop struggling. Stop it. You're not going to free yourself. You're just going to make things worse. Just cry out, Lord, save me. Save me, Lord. There's only one person who can free you, and that's Jesus. So humble yourself. 1 Peter 5, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Cast it all on him. Maybe you've given your life to the Lord, but you're still struggling to stay on that narrow path. Maybe you got wrapped up in sin and selfish desires and you feel trapped. Nevertheless, cry out, save me, Lord. Save me. Go ahead and open up to Matthew chapter 14. I got a lot of favorite passages in the Bible. This is one of them. I'd say it's top 15 maybe. I don't know. I probably shouldn't rate the Bible like that, but it's a good one. Verse 22. All right. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. Jesus is a celebrity at this point. He's just fed like 20,000 people. And everyone wants to take him into Jerusalem, march him in, and make him king. And he tells the disciples, get out of here, go to the other side of the lake. I'm going to go up and pray. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, it is a ghost. And they cried out in fear, but immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. It's our life, right? I love that because it's just a great picture of my life. When I am focused on Jesus, life is great, and I feel like I'm doing amazing things. But it's when I start to look at the wind and the waves and all around it, the world and everything on it, that I start to drown, and I have to say, Lord, save me. That temptation is there for each and every one of us all the time. Middle schoolers up there, how you guys doing? Hey, I just want to let you guys know that I love having you guys here, and I hope you guys feel welcomed and accepted. And if anyone is not that way to you, let me know and I'll beat them up for you, okay? Deal? Okay, awesome. All right. Better? Good? Good? All right. Anyway, back to my mountaintop moment. But then we come down from the mountaintop and we start to get into the regularities of life, and school starts up and we have temptation over here and temptation over here and whatnot. And we start to drown. And I want everyone to know, whether you've been in this walk a long time or just a short time, that you get off the wrong path and you start to drown, all you need to do again is to say, Lord, save me. Lord, save me. I don't know how many times I've cried out, Lord, save me. This whole Christian walk is just a bunch of Lord, save me's with a whole bunch of other stuff in between. That's what the Christian walk is. Lord, save me. Lord, save me. And you know why he does it that way? Because he's teaching us to trust in him. Teaching us to live his way. He's humbling us so that we rely on him and not ourselves. Here's the formula. We screw up, we cry out, Jesus saves us. Time and time and time again. Go back to verse 2 of our passage here. So Psalm 116, verse 2, it says, because he inclined his ear to me, therefore I will call on him as long as I live. Calling him once, calling him twice, calling him 3 times, maybe 5, 6, 7. No. I will call on him as long as I live, till the day I die. Next, God saves. Verse 5. Gracious is the Lord and righteous. Our God is merciful. So now he's turning from God hearing to the goodness of God to save those who cry out. Why does he hear our cry and save us? Well, I just read it. Because it's who he is. It's his character. It says he's gracious, he's righteous, and he's merciful. He's gracious. He saves us when we don't deserve it, even though we have nothing to offer him. I just picture, like, this is my life, and this is the psalmist, right? Like, I was walking in rebellion towards God, and then I got caught in a trap, and I'm hanging from a net from a tree, having been a rebel to God my entire life. And yet I just cry out, Jesus, save me. And there he is. Because he's gracious. It's not about me deserving it or being worthy of it. When we are humble, we cry out and he saves. He's righteous. He always does what is right. There is never a moment that he will not save a humble heart that cries out. Never. Because it's the right thing to do. And he is perfectly righteous. And he's merciful, and which means compassionate. Instead of striking us down as rebels when he comes to that net and you say, you stupid rebel, you've been raging against me your entire life, and now you cry out and you expect me to save you. No. But he shows compassion when we don't deserve it, and he forgives us. He is perfectly gracious, he is perfectly righteous, and he is perfectly merciful. Now, a lot of the bad teaching that we see within the church today starts when we focus on one or two of these things to the neglect of the others. Like the liberal Protestant movement, which just stresses like the mercy and the grace of God and doesn't want really anything to do with the righteousness of God. And so what it turns into is this thing where everyone's saved because God's all merciful and he's gracious, and there's no such thing as righteousness or holiness. And then on the other side of that, you have legalistic churches who want to just talk about the righteousness of God, but not the grace or the mercy of God. And so what that turns into is we all just save ourselves, and it turns into a works kind of righteousness. Both are wrong and both are heretical. If you go back to verse 6, it says, the Lord preserves the simple. When I was brought low, he saved me. When we cry out for mercy, God gives it. God offers his grace to every single one of us, but it is a gift, and like a gift, it must be accepted. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. He gave him to us to die in our place. Now, if you offer me a gift, I can either take it or I can say, no, thank you, I'm good. I don't have to take the gift. It's the same thing with what God has done for us through Christ. It's humble to accept such a gift. It brings humility because it makes me say, I can't save myself. Finally, God is righteous to show compassion to those who seek it, to those who are humble, and he's also righteous to destroy those who reject it, to the proud. It says God gives grace to the humble and opposes the proud, James 4:6. I think about it like this. School is about ready to start back up. And so what I do in my classroom is I say, okay, we're going to do 30 minutes of math. And then as long as you're working hard and do your job, then you have 15 minutes of free time at the end of class. And that's a good little carrot on a stick for the kids. It gives them a reason to work hard. I can't give them money for working hard, so I got to give them something, right? Got to be some motivation there. 30 minutes, and then you can have the last 15 minutes to yourself. Well, what sometimes happens is I'll say, okay, it's free time. Your 15 minutes can start now. And I'll have one student who kind of just was messing up the entire 30 minutes and talking and not doing their work. I'll say, hey, Johnny Jojo, I'm sorry, but you actually owe me 10 more minutes because you weren't working. And you know what kids do sometimes? They really want to get under your skin. They'll say something like, good, great, because I love doing math. You know what I'm talking about, right? To which I reply, that's good, because you get 30 minutes of it now. I kind of see it like that when we're talking about God and his grace. We get in that net, caught in the net, and say, I like my net. Good, I like my net. I want to stay in my net. This is okay. You can stay in your net for all eternity. That's your choice. Verse 7 through 9. Return, O my soul, to your rest, for the Lord has dealt bountifully with you. Now the psalmist starts to show us what the result of God's saving work is in our life. And verse 7 talks about its rest. We get to rest again. Before it was this life of constant turmoil and craziness, and now there's rest and there's peace. And then in verse 8, for you have delivered my soul from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. What we see is a totally changed life. To walk before the Lord means to walk in the light, to live according to God's way, to follow Jesus, to live according to his standard as his disciple, to walk in relationship with God. Not only does God save us initially, but we see this, he doesn't just save the psalmist, but he gives him new life in the land of the living, in a relationship with God the way it was always meant to be. It's the same exact thing with us, guys. God saves us, yes, that justification. But he doesn't stop there. He sends his Spirit to give us new life. He sent his Son to save us, and he sends his Spirit to give us new life here and today. Not only does he just rescue us from that net, but he cuts us down and says, hey, you're free, and now you can follow me, and I'll show you how you don't get trapped in those nets anymore. I'll show you the way to true life. God's saving work is not just in the rescue, but it's in everything that comes after that as well. He teaches us how to live. He sanctifies us so that we are made into his image. Go ahead and turn over to Matthew chapter 11. One of my favorite passages in the Bible. Verse 28, Jesus says, come to me all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Does he say, I'm going to take your burdens from you. I'm going to cut you free from that net. But what's he say? Take my yoke upon you. It doesn't stop there. Not just going to free us, but he's going to show us how to live as a disciple to him so that he can teach us. So God saves. Last point, our response. Verses 10 through 19. I believed even when I spoke. I am greatly afflicted. I said in my alarm, all mankind are liars. What shall I render to the Lord for all his benefits to me? I will lift up the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. O Lord, I am your servant. I am your servant, the son of your maidservant. You have loosed my bonds. I will offer you to the sacrifice of thanksgiving and call on the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people, in the courts of the house of the Lord, in your midst, O Jerusalem. Praise the Lord. What is our response to what God has done in our lives? Well, verse 10 and 11 says the first thing is, I believed. We live by faith, trusting in God, even in the trials, even in the tough times, even in the times when we feel trapped. We trust in God, not men, because men are untrustworthy. Only God saves, not men. I hope you don't put any hope in me as your pastor to save you, because I don't save you, or your friends, or your parents will not save you. There is only one person who saves you, and his name is Jesus. Most cults generally start with some flamboyant leader who promises to save those who trust in him. If I'm not pointing you to Jesus to trust, then you need to get rid of me as your pastor, because I'm not a good pastor if I'm not just pointing you to trust in Jesus, because it's all about him. I stink. Then he gets into verse 12. What shall I render to the Lord for all his benefits to me? That's a rhetorical question. Nothing. What are you going to do for God who saved you? Who paid your debt? It's very similar to Jesus' question in Matthew 16:26 when he says, what shall man give in exchange for his soul? It's rhetorical. There's nothing. Are you going to give $1 trillion for your soul for eternity? There's no answer to that. It's exactly what he's saying here in verse 12. What can I give the Lord for what he's done for me? There is no way for us to pay back God for what he's done in our lives. So the psalmist says what he's going to do is he's going to pay his vows. He's going to offer the sacrifice of thanksgiving in the presence of God's people. He's going to go into the temple and he's going to offer a thanksgiving offering and pay his vows. What about us today? We don't have a temple. We don't do sacrifices. What is our response to God's salvation in our life? It's kind of the same. Thankful hearts. We're thankful. You know how much that glorifies God when we're just thankful for what he's done in our lives and we live that way? Thankful hearts that praise and worship him in the congregation, just like in the temple. When we come together as God's people and we praise and worship him, our Savior, and what he's done, when we sing Mighty to Save, and we sing it at the top of our voices because we just want to sing about our God and what he's done for us. What is our sacrifice today? Go over to Romans chapter 12. I think this tops like the verses we've looked up in this church for the last 5+ years. I think this probably tops them all. Romans 12, verse 1. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. It's just that attitude that says, God, I am yours, and I belong to you. We see it back in verse 16 of our Psalm 2. When he says, O Lord, I am your servant, the son of your maidservant. You have loosed my bonds. It's just that heart that says, God, I belong to you. Use me however you will to do your will. Your will be done. And I just want to end tonight on verse 15. When I think of Psalm 116, I really didn't know it from before this week all that well, except for verse 15. And it reads, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. It's really hard where this fits in an Old Testament theology, and it's really hard where this fits in our psalm, but I'm going to do my best to explain. The psalmist was delivered from death once. We know that, right? From the pangs of death. But after that, guess what? He died. There's only two things that are certainties in this life, right? Death and taxes. And as humans, we do everything in our power to escape death, not to think about death. It is to be avoided at all costs. Now, this verse was used in the early church to speak of the martyrs who died for their faith. They would die and they would say, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. What does God think of the death of his people? He thinks it's precious. Why? So I wonder if Micaiah and Zeke grew up, and let's say they just moved to Uzbekistan, the farthest point away from us on earth. See, I tied it in. There you go. And they moved to Uzbekistan. Now, I would love to get phone calls from them. I would love to get FaceTime calls from them, to get letters from my sons. But if they were to come home and visit after some time away, you would come up to me, how was their visit? And I would tell you it was precious. It's the same with God. Why is it precious to God? because that's when we get to see our Father face to face and be in his presence. He sent his Son to save us from the net. He sent his Spirit to guide us through this life. And one day we're going to die, and we're going to be with our Father forever and ever and ever. And if that's not precious, I don't know what is. I got to go to Andrew's grandpa's funeral 2 Sundays ago, Jerry Roth. There's not many things more powerful than the memorial service of a godly person. I've been to 2 that were just like one at Calvary Chapel and Jerry's, and there's something so powerful about it. You have no doubt, like, this person was sold out for God, and by no means were they perfect, but you're like, that was a true man of God right there, or that was a true woman of God right there, totally sold out, a living sacrifice. And I probably wept for a good, I think I told Andrew 40%. I wasn't timing exactly, but I think it was a little bit under 50% of just crying, and not because I was sad. I mean, Andrew was crying too, but he was probably maybe for different reasons, because it was precious. It's one of the most beautiful things I will witness on this earth, is to go to the memorial service for a true man of God. Because the thing he was living for his entire life is now right before him. He sees it. Death is precious to the saints. It's not a penalty. It's not loss. What does Paul call it? He calls it gain. Let's pray. Father, we thank you. We don't have to fear death. We don't have to fear anything because we belong to you, and our debt has been paid through your Son. God, if there is anyone in this room, God, who feels tangled in that net, who's been struggling and struggling and struggling, God, I pray that you would give them humility, that you would humble their heart, and they would say, Lord, save me. It's time. God, we thank you for the salvation we have in Christ. We thank you for the Spirit that you give us, that guides us through this life and empowers us. God, help us to be living sacrifices, that by our lives and by our words, by our actions, by everything we do, we would glorify you, because you're worthy of it all. In Jesus' name, amen. We're going to go ahead and open up communion. I want to